Welcome back to the CP stage, where we have a few moments to talk about ministry in California. I'm Jeff Iorg, the president of Gateway Seminary, and it's my privilege to welcome some guests today to the panel to talk about what it means to minister in California and the impact that ministry from California is making on the world. So let me quickly ask everyone on the panel to introduce themselves, and then I'll start asking some questions and talking about our work here in this state.
I'm Victor Chayasirisobhon. I'm the California Southern Baptist Convention president and pastor of First Southern Baptist Church of Anaheim.
And I'm Anthony Dockery, senior pastor of St. Stephen Baptist Church in LaPuente, California.
Ryan Blackwell, serve as the executive and teaching pastor at Cross Church in Northwest Arkansas.
And I'm Kelly King. I'm the women's ministry specialist for Lifeway Christian Resources.
California has had a profound impact on Christianity really across the nation and around the world. A lot of people think of California as kind of a spiritual wasteland and wonder, really, is there much emphasis on the gospel here? But just some fast facts. First of all, the three great awakenings in the 20th century in American culture all started in California. The Azusa Street Revival, the Billy Graham movement, and then the Jesus movement in the 1970s all started here in Southern California. And then major organizations that have impacted the world like Campus Crusade for Christ, Focus on the Family, the Navigators, all started here in Southern California. And right now, a recent list of 100 of the largest churches in North America, 19 of them are here in California. So this state has a profound spiritual impact on the nation, and that's what we want to talk about here this afternoon. So I want to start with you, Victor.
Sure.
You grew up here in California. You're the president of the California Southern Baptist Convention. What is it about California that makes it such a profitable ministry field where you like to work?
Well, again, California is an exciting place. It's extremely diverse, has people of many different ethnicities, and they're coming off of the plane every single day. I mean, I've been here for over almost 40 years now, and doing ministry here myself alongside my father. It's made us to be more creative as we're reaching different people, some of which who barely heard of Christ as they got off of a plane, some of them who have heard of Christ or feel like they've heard of Christ for a long time from their families, and then just trying to help them to know the Jesus Christ that they thought they heard of but never knew. And again, just discipling Christians that are here. So it's been very challenging, which again breeds creativity.
Yeah. Victor, you grew up here in California, but Tony, you're the opposite. You had a career in the Air Force and really had opportunities to become a commercial pilot, but chose to come into ministry instead and come to California to do that ministry. Why is it you chose California, and what difference has that made in your life?
Yeah, California is a beautiful place. I mean, there's so many things here geographically, they're ethnically as well, and I met my wife here. That's a big plus as well. And just the ministry here, where our church is in LaPuente, gentrification there over the last 30 years. It started off predominantly Caucasian, and it moved to Hispanic, Latino, and now it's moving to Asian as well. And just that diversity, the nations have come to California. And so when you impact California, not only do you impact the nation here, but you impact the world.
Kelly, let's skip to you for a moment. You've recently made the decision to enroll at Gateway Seminary to come to California for training. You live in Nashville. What is it that caused you to say, I want to train in the West to lead a national ministry like you have responsibility to lead?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons that we choose, I chose to come to Gateway, but there's also just the West, when you think about the impact of not just California, but the entire West. And every time that Lifeway comes to the West, and we come to California specifically, we see great numbers of women who just desire to want to be trained. They want to be equipped for how God's called them. And so we see this as a really great pathway, and Gateway has just been a good partner with us in a lot of ways. And also it's been a great place for me to flourish as someone in ministry.
That's awesome. Now, Ryan, you're unique in that you're not in ministry in California today. You're actually in ministry in Arkansas. But you made the choice to come to the West for seminary a number of years ago to specifically train here. And then you stayed here and were a pastor for a number of years. Why did you decide to come to California, and how did you see that preparing you for a lifetime of ministry leadership?
Yeah, I loved having my southern roots. I grew up in Arkansas. But when I was deciding on seminaries, I really wanted to go, if I wanted to make a difference in the world, I had to go to where the world was. And I saw that as California. And so to be able to come and do seminary at a place where the professors were also pastoring, they were involved, and where I could automatically take the opportunities that I had learned about in seminary, put them into practice in the ministry. That was a big deal for me to have that opportunity to do that.
Also, Ryan, you stayed in California and were a pastor for a number of years before you went to your present assignment at Cross Church. How did pastoring in California impact you and prepare you to be a better pastor when you left California and went to be a leader in another state?
I mean, I would say I was a completely changed person because of my time in California pastoring. I think the main thing, really, the number one thing is I learned to depend deeply upon the Holy Spirit. Ministry in California, almost every day that I pastored, I realized I have no idea what I'm doing. I cannot meet the needs of this congregation. I cannot meet the needs of this moment. And so it created in me a deep reliance, and that stuck with me everywhere that I've gone in ministry. I think it's also taught me how to really minister to people that are different than I am. In our church, we had 40 different nations represented in our body, and so every single meal, every single dinner out with somebody was a learning encounter where I really learned how to minister effectively with people who are very different perspective, politics, all those different things.
You know, you mentioned the diversity that you encountered in California and how that prepared you for even your work in Arkansas. Victor, you also mentioned the diversity aspect. Why don't you and Tony talk about that? You work in diverse communities in California. How does that enrich your ministry? Why is that not a threat like so many people fear that it is? And what have you learned that has made you a better leader for working in a diverse context? Both of you can answer that.
You want to take it first, Pastor Tony? Well, again, in my community, it was a community that was largely Caucasian in 1951, but as the years changed, it changed to Hispanic. And then you put an Asian pastor in the middle of a Hispanic community, and you don't always know how to communicate. I mean, I speak some Spanglish, and I try my best. But it's more, you learn that it's less about words than it is about actions. And as God calls us to love the nations, throughout California, it helps us to do those actions before we get those words. And that's how we can actually act out our faith rather than just talking about it. And that's what they want to see anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. And I'll just echo on what Victor was saying and just having that inclusion. I mean, that's what it's all about. And I know in our church it's predominantly African American, like I said, in the predominantly actually Hispanic, Latino, now moving towards Asian culture. And it was a shift for our congregation as well to prepare for the nations to come into our church. And so we started with our staff, and now it's really being embraced, and the staff is really the bridge to the nations. So it's been working well that way. It started with the staff, and now our church is actually becoming, multi-ethnic, multicultural, if you will.
Well, one of the things that's true about ministering in California is that you learn that what you can do here does have a global impact. California is the 8th largest economy in the world. If it were a separate nation, that's where it would rank in the global economy. California has also a reputation, sometimes a negative reputation, for being a cultural influencer in the country. Obviously, Hollywood and Haight-Ashbury are both here, and so a lot of the culture that's emerged from those two locations has moved across the country over time. In 1989, when I moved to the West Coast, one of the reasons I moved here was because I really came to the conviction that the country was changed from the coasts to the center. And I moved out of the center to the coast and saw the influence and was trying to make a difference in that influence. So with all of that being said, how have you seen your ministry in California having global impact? For example, Tony, you've had ministry not just as a pastor, but you've worked as a trustee at other organizations. You've been the chairman of the board of the university here. Others of you have had other responsibilities. How has ministry in California given you a platform for really making a global impact?
Yeah, we've been blessed in many areas to serve literally all over the world, whether it's missions or having the missions come to us and having the nations come to us. We have California Miramar University that shares our campus as well, and these kids literally come from all over the world. They're from Australia, Europe as well, and so we're connecting with them. We have a work in Africa. We have a work in the Azores. We're literally all over the world meeting the needs of people. It is phenomenal. And what it has done for our church is it has kind of rounded out discipleship. When people go somewhere else where they're not comfortable and actually have to express their faith, that's what helps them to actually know they have a faith and a conviction that they can share not only locally and nationally, but globally.
That's good. What else? How has California given you a platform for making a larger impact in the world?
Well, again, our church not only has our church, we are a campus of 6 churches that work together as one. 2 Spanish churches, a Kenyan church, a Thai church, our church, and of course we also have a Christian school, which has tons of international students. And so again, people that come here, they get to know Christ, they pay to come to the school, we educate them with scripture through the chapel, through Bible classes, and what happens? Some of them stay, some of them graduate and go to college, and they get on their careers, and then what happens? A lot of them go back into the world. They tell their parents about Christ. Some of their parents come to know about Christ, and then that's how we really impact the world in those ways as well.
That's very significant. You know, at Gateway Seminary, we've had a long-standing program, of course, of commitment to missions, and we're proud of that and glad for that. But even beyond that, we've been able to help people enculturate and learn how to do ministry in various kinds of cultures, even if they stay in California or in the U.S., because of the locations we serve and because of the context in which we work. So that's been great. Now, Kelly, you have a responsibility that really covers the nation. You're responsible for women's programming and women's ministry for Lifeway, for the whole country. You do California events. How do you see those events impacting what you do in the rest of the nation, or what perhaps have you learned from those events that makes a difference as you work across the United States?
Well, we're definitely learners as well as practitioners of teaching them. So when we come into California, we have to ask a lot of good questions. We have to say, tell us a little bit about what ministry looks like for you in your context. Tell us a little bit about the culture in which you serve. And that helps us understand a little bit about what maybe even in a Northern California area, because you can take California and you can divide it up as well. So being in Northern California, doing an event there is very different than doing an event in San Diego. And so you have to kind of know that and know, okay, how are we going to train women in this area and what are the needs? And so we have to ask a lot of good questions about that.
That's excellent. And Ryan, you mentioned already that you have a very diverse church where you are with all these different nationalities and different groups. You said California, it really helped you to do that. Tell where you pastored in California and what that was like when you were here in our state.
It was always an adventure. I was the pastor at First Baptist Church, San Francisco.
There's a First Baptist Church in San Francisco,
that's exactly
California.
right downtown. Great church family.
That's right.
And so it's been interesting. There's so many things that I learned there that Rachel and I, my wife Rachel, has taken and lived out in Arkansas. One of those being the importance of hospitality in discipleship and evangelism. If you can get people that are very different than you, but you can get them around your table, you're able to have conversations that you just can't have in other environments. And so we've taken that. We've tried to live that out in Arkansas. The ability to do a lot of different things with little resources. I think California just teaches you how to do that. And that was an important lesson that God brought me along very quickly serving in California.
Well, that's a good word. I want to carry the discussion a little farther on something I call myths about ministry in California. For example, you know, I travel across the United States speaking on a regular basis, if not even a weekly basis, and people often say to me, how do you stand it out there with all those crazies in California? How do you deal with all the liberals in California? How do you handle all the opposition and all the bitterness and hatred and anger that you must feel in California about being a Christian? And I have to smile at all of that because those are really 3 big myths about living in California. Okay? So the first big myth is there aren't any Christians in California. Victor, how many Southern Baptist churches are there in the state of California approximately?
Yeah, there's approximately 2,400 Southern Baptist churches in California. That's right.
That's right. There's about 2,400 Southern Baptist churches in California, so it's not like there aren't any Christians in California. Yeah. Also, you know, I mentioned that you were the chairman of the board of the university, California Baptist University. But there's also other schools in California like Biola, Azusa Pacific, Masters College, Cal Baptist. There's all these other schools. Why? Because there's lots of Christians that want Christian education in California, okay? So the myth that there aren't any Christians in California, that's kind of out the door. Second, here's another myth. I'd like for any of you to comment on this. There's a lot of antagonism, anger, bitterness, meanness, opposition. Everybody's out to get us if we're Christians in California. Is that the experience you guys have had living in this state?
Well, I think if you look at it, if you go to the Bible Belt, probably what they contend with the most is in Revelations 3 when it talks about being lukewarm. In the Bible Belt, everyone's pretty much going to go to church. That's already decided. Most of them are believers. But in California, the issue is lostness as well as lukewarm. And so you kind of have this microcosm of both. Both are present, where you're dealing with the lukewarm Christian as well as lostness. And so, of course, you can have that tension, but that's what makes it a challenge. That's what makes it a blessing. That's why we're here, is to do all we can to pierce into that darkness and to love on them, whatever it is, whether it is, I'm lukewarm and God wants to spew me out, or I'm just plain old lost.
Yeah. Ryan, did you find that people are a lot about the same in terms of their level of antagonism, though, even living in San Francisco as they are to Arkansas? Yeah. I mean, my point is simply this. I've been living on the West Coast for 33 years. I can count the conversations on one hand with people who've been antagonistic toward me about the gospel. Most people are open to a conversation. If you approach them in a winsome way, they'll have a conversation with you. Have you found that to be true both in California and in Arkansas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was interesting. First Baptist is located just literally right across the street from the LGBT Center of California, in downtown San Francisco. And people always would ask, because you got the rainbow flags right next to the cross, like, man, is this a battle? Is this always hostile? Not once. We had a good relationship that we were able to continue to try to minister to that community. And so we never found that to have the same hostility that people envision it to be.
And I would even say, living in Tennessee, and in the last couple of years with COVID, we've seen so much influx of Californians moving, into other states. And I have not seen that I think there's been this mentality of like, please don't bring your crazy California ideas to Tennessee or whatever. And I haven't seen that. I've really seen that they embrace. A lot of them are Christians, and they're looking for places to plug in. And so our churches need to say, okay, tell us how to do better at what we need to be doing, because we can be lukewarm, like you said, for sure.
Yeah, another myth in California and the West is people say, well, there must be all this racial tension and racial division in California. And there are racial tension and division issues everywhere in the United States. We get that. But quite frankly, one of the beautiful things about California is the way that people do get along with each other and the way we value the differences rather than argue and fight about those. You guys work in multicultural communities. Is that your experience there, that people generally find a way to value and highlight those differences more than divide up over them?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's always differences. There's differences everywhere. But in California, we just got a lot more races than everywhere else, or a lot more different ethnicities and stuff. So we just kind of learned to get along. Again, I went to they said an all-Asian school. And you would think that all of us Asians get along. But that's not the case. It's what happened was the Koreans separated from the Chinese, from the Thai, from the Filipinos. And because the Koreans were the major group, the Thais just allied with the Filipinos. And guess what's in my church right now? Thai Filipinos along with Hispanics and Caucasians and some African Americans. So you can say that there's division, but I see a lot more unity as well.
How about you, Tony?
100%. I mean, when you have everyone represented over time, you move from some level of intolerance to toleration. And toleration means we do differ, we do see things differently, but yet and still we embrace our differences. And that's what we see so much here in California.
Yeah. The big problem in California is lostness. It's what you said at the beginning. It's lostness. It's people don't yet know Jesus Christ, and we have to stay focused on that as opposed to a lot of these other kinds of issues. And when I hear these, what I call myths about California and other places, I sometimes just smile, sometimes I'm a little sad, but I'm grateful that that really doesn't define who we are or what we're doing, and we have this real capacity to make a significant difference here. And one other myth about California is that there aren't any, strong churches or really strong ministries. And as I said, a lot of the largest churches in the country are here in California. Quite frankly, church planting is a great opportunity still in California. And yes, we have some great churches and some strong churches. We need a lot more churches as well. In the West, people sometimes say, well, where do you need the next church started? And in the West, we would say, on the next street corner. There's never going to be enough churches. Just come and help us plant one. And so there's all this kind of opportunity that exists in California that is far more significant than any of these divisions or difficulties or challenges that people sometimes perceive as our myths. So I'll give you the last word. If you were to say to people, what's the best reason about coming to California to do ministry, why would you say come to California?
I know this has already been said, but the diversity is really huge. And I remember bringing my parents to my graduation a few years ago, and I don't think they even realized the diversity at Gateway Seminary, and it was eye-opening to them, and it was beautiful. It was really fun to see that, and I appreciate that even about the seminary.
Good. Ryan?
Lostness. I mean, you got an opportunity to penetrate the darkness.
Good.
He took the word. It's the lostness. It's the opportunity. That's the drive. That's the focus. That's what we're about.
That's right. 40 million people, 2,400 churches. We need you. People ask me, why you got so many titles? Why you do so many things? Because you ain't out here. We need you out here. Come on now. I need the help. All right, let's go.
That's a good word. Well, that's a little bit about what it means to minister in California and why it matters. And we hope you've enjoyed the panel discussion today. And hey, California matters. It's a great place. It's a great opportunity. Thanks for being here in ministry with us. And thanks to all you partners for making it happen.